Welcome back into the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, presented by Full Press Coverage. Sap, the All-Star rosters have finally been announced, though there is still a draft to come as LeBron James and Kevin Durant need to select their actual teams. I don't even know if either of those guys are going to end up playing in the game itself. I know Durant's not. LeBron is hurt right now, so maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. But we do know who the pool is. I'm going to just list them off real quick, Sap, and then you can give me your immediate reactions. So in the West, the rest of the All-Stars look like this: Chris Paul, Luka Doncic, Devin Booker, Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert, Karl Anthony Towns, and Draymond Green. Draymond Green is not going to be playing in the game. He already announced that. In the East, it's Jimmy Butler, Darius Garland, James Harden, Zach LaVine, Chris Middleton, Jason Tatum, and Fred VanVleet. So, Sap, what was your initial reaction to these rosters?
I think they got it right. I know in the Boston market, people are talking about, Jaylen Brown should be named as a sub. Obviously, Jason Tatum was named as a sub. This will be his third straight appearance in the All-Star game. And with Durant being out, I'm assuming that Commissioner then announced Jason Tatum as the starter. That kind of makes sense. And then at that point, Durant will be replaced maybe by Jaylen Brown or by LaMelo Ball. I think Charlotte deserves to have someone on the All-Star team, and I think LaMelo Ball does more than Jaylen Brown, right? He out-rebounds him, he out-passes him. He doesn't score quite like Jaylen Brown, but he's getting better all the time, and he's a bigger star than Jaylen Brown. So that's, I think, what might happen. The rest of the selections look pretty good. In the Western Conference, we know Draymond's not going to play, and I'm hoping that the commissioner picks Anthony Edwards of Minnesota, which has been a surprise team this year.
Right.
And again, it's an all-star game. We know what he's capable of doing on the court, but he's also a personality off the court. And I think, it'd be kind of cool to have a young stud like that in the all-star game as well. But for the most part, I think they got this right. I really can't say that they messed up too many of them. Fred VanVleet, you never think of as an all-star, but he's had a really good year in Toronto, surprised people. There's just a lot of teams in the East that are all within 5 games of each other. Heck, the Celtics are the 9 seed right now, and they're 5 games out of first place. I mean, not that I think they're going to catapult all those teams and be the number 1 seed, but that's how close the Eastern Conference is from 1 to 10. Atlanta's been the hottest team in the conference, and they're the 10 seed right now, only a game behind Boston. So the East is just so spread out that it almost makes sense that all these teams have like one guy rather than multiple players. I know one other thing before I let you chime in here, Jet, is, people are going to say Chris Middleton, does he belong on the All-Star?
Yeah.
But Milwaukee's the defending champs. We saw what he did in the postseason last year, and I would say he does deserve there. And there's one other player that I think people haven't really talked about, Tyreese Maxey, who's had a really good year with Philadelphia. Heck, they're right in contention for the number 1 seed without Ben Simmons playing a single game. So he's really good. But there's always going to be a few guys left off that deserve to make the All-Star team, because we're talking, about a limited number of players, 24 in a league with 450 players, and probably 50 that in some sense have All-Star caliber years.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always going to be, snubs, especially as we've talked about many times on the show going forward. The talent's just continuing to put the talent pool, I should say, is continuing to increase in the NBA. So there's naturally going to be snubs. I wholeheartedly agree with you about LaMelo Ball. I think that he should definitely be in there, not just because the Hornets have been surprisingly good and he's been really good too, but because I think his game translates really well to an All-Star game and it'd be really fun to watch in an All-Star game. And, it gives you sort of that, not necessarily changing of the guard, but, a fresh face that I expect to be in the All-Star game for many, many years to come. I think he's definitely deserving of it. So if I had to swap out one guy in the East, it would be Middleton, and I'd put in Ball. I'm a diehard Celtics guy, but I don't think Jaylen Brown deserves it this year. He's been injured. The team's been disappointing. I don't have a problem with him not having made the list, Sap.
Yeah, I don't either. I mean, he would be like the second or third alternate if we go that far, right? Because I think LaMelo Ball's had a better year, and you do have to have someone on Charlotte that has a better record than the Celtics. And again, there's a ton of scorers in the league, right? But how many guys that make the All-Star team are great passers, great facilitators? You've got James Harden, you've got Chris Paul, you'll have LeBron James if he plays, but LaMelo Ball is that type of player that, just think of some of the things we'd see with LaMelo Ball with Giannis or Joel Embiid, driving the lane and alley-oops to those two great players. I mean, we'll see all of that with LaMelo Ball. I just always remember, I'm going back a long time ago, 35 years ago, when Magic Johnson was a perennial all-star, and it was so fun to watch him because he never really needed to score. And I just remember there was one all-star game where all I remember was Magic feeding Ralph Sampson with alley-oops. And, Magic kind of later said, imagine if we were on the same team, in the regular season, how crazy this would be. So I love the passing aspect of it. All these guys can score. They can all dunk. They can all shoot, do whatever's necessary. But to really step it up, you want to see the great passes out there. And LaMelo Ball is one of the best in the league.
Yeah, he definitely is, and he's a joy to watch. The Celtics played the Hornets in a good game the other night. Celtics came out on top, but Ball had a career high 38 points, and he's really spectacular to watch. And as is the guy that you said you want in the Western Conference, Anthony Edwards. He does have his teammate Karl Anthony Towns already in there. We've talked about him on the show before, Sap. We both agree he probably has the best personality in the NBA, and personalities really shine during All-Star weekend. So just for the sake of him being mic'd up on the court and stuff, I think that would be very enjoyable to have him there. I on a lot of people's snubs list is Anthony Davis. I just don't see why he's at all deserving this year, Sap. And you're a Lakers guy by, convenience because LeBron's there. But do you consider that a snub?
No, not really. I mean, Karl Anthony Towns has played better than Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis has missed, 5-6 weeks? Since he's come back from that injury, he looks more like Anthony Davis as a dominant player, right? And I think that bodes well for the Lakers, because if you got Anthony Davis playing the way he has the last 2 weeks coming back from injury, and then you get LeBron back playing the way he did before his injury, and again, fingers crossed that both guys remain healthy, the Lakers can be in play in the Western Conference. I'm not saying they're better than Phoenix or Golden State or maybe even Memphis, but they will scare teams if those two players are playing at a high level and are both are healthy. But no, I don't think Anthony Davis belongs in the All-Star game this year. I mean, he's obviously, when healthy, a top 10 player, but that shouldn't just get you into the All-Star game unless you're a veteran player, right? Like LeBron and Kevin Durant and those great players, Steph Curry, even if they're off a little bit, you want to see those guys in the All-Star game because they're icons. Anthony Davis is not at that level. I've also heard from the Eastern Conference that people want to see Kyrie Irving in there. He's played 10 games.
That's
is
insane.
He an All-Star?
That's
is
insane.
He All-Star? Of course, he's talent-wise an All-Star. He's one of the most gifted players in the league. But if you only play 10 games, I don't think he'd belong in the All-Star game. And I think Jaylen Brown's hurt by the fact that he's missed a dozen games. And look, there aren't many Iron Men in the league anymore because of load management. And we've had the COVID situation and a lot of players being hurt. So, I mean, there aren't a lot of guys that have played every game this year. The players miss time. Even Giannis has missed.
No, look at the East roster, Sap. Butler, right. Levine, Tatum, all those guys have missed plenty of games.
Yeah, so I mean, I can give a little leeway, but Davis missed nearly 6 weeks, Jet. That's a lot of games. So I don't think he's deserving of making the All-Star game. And again, who would you rather see in the All-Star game? I'm not debating who's a better player, Anthony Davis or Anthony Edwards. Anthony Edwards, hopefully if he's in the dunk contest, that would be another fun thing to watch. I mean, he's a spectacular player and just that personality is refreshing. And what the NBA does really well is obviously you cater to the established stars like LeBron and Durant and all of those great players, but you also bring in the new stars. So I think it would be great to see LaMelo Ball and Anthony Edwards, who both came out of the same draft in 2020. They're only in their second year, to both be there. It could be like, okay, here's the two young guns that we really are high on.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, I think that the All-Star game is more fun when you get fresh blood in there, a mix of fresh blood and the veterans, because you sort of see that that competition between guys who are trying to prove themselves and the established stars. So I think that's an inherent, fun storyline. Last guy I think that's worthy of, talking about as a snub is a lot of people in Cleveland are upset that Jared Allen wasn't involved. More so, I think, because the game is in Cleveland than his numbers. He's had a very nice season, 16 and 10. The Cavs have been very good. But I don't know if I would say Jared Allen's, and maybe by virtue of there's not that many great centers in the NBA, but they got it right by picking his teammate Garland as an all-star. He's definitely deserving. Jared Allen, nice player. I think he's fitting very well in Cleveland, but I wouldn't put him in the all-star game.
No. And at some point he will make it. Evan Mobley at some point will make it. We really like what Cleveland's doing this year. Colin Sexton and Ricky Rubio both out for the year, and yet with those two players out, they've been able to maintain contact atop the East. I mean, there's just the final 2 months of the season is going to be interesting, Jet, because you just have 10 teams that you can almost throw a blanket over. Like I said, the Celtics are ninth. They've won 7 out of their last 10. They're 10-4 over their last 14. And Atlanta, which went to the conference finals last year, is right now the 10 seed. And
they're a second half team. Atlanta. It was the same as last year, right?
Right. I mean, they beat Phoenix the other night. That not many people beat Phoenix. Phoenix loses like once every 2 weeks. So, the East. These playoffs could be really interesting because the teams at the top are flawed, right? I mean, Brooklyn, when's Durant coming back? Harden looks like he's checked out. Kyrie basically says basketball is a job to him, and with him, it's a part-time job. Who else looks that solid in the East? I would still say Milwaukee's probably the favorite since they're the defending champs, but they haven't been that consistent this year either. I'm high on Miami, but they're limited in some sense. So the East is going to be wide open.
No, Milwaukee is the biggest margin for error, I guess, Sap. Is that how you would describe it, of those teams?
Yeah, because they have the best player. They're going to go into every series through the East or in the finals. In my opinion, Giannis is the best player in the league. And look, and it's tough for me to being a LeBron guy, and LeBron on a given night can still be the best player in the league. But night in, night out, Giannis is the best player in the league. Then I think LeBron and Kevin Durant are the second and third best players. Pick your position, who's second, who's third. And I think that's the way it kind of lays out. But, at this point in his career, Giannis is a true force on the defensive end. LeBron isn't. And just look at the numbers Giannis is putting up. They're just silly. I mean, the assists. I mean, he's averaging nearly 7 assists per game. I mean,
and it's almost quiet because now people are just like, he's like the chalkiest player ever. You're just like, oh, he's going to get his, 26. He's going to get 10 rebounds, might have 5 or 6 assists. Like, he's going to play awesome defense. It's just like, I mean, he's he's become incredibly consistent.
Yeah, I mean, remember when Anthony Davis was really cooking in New Orleans? And again, it didn't lead to much playoff success, but he was the guy who was putting up like 28 and 12 every night. Well, Giannis doing that. Giannis plays defense as good as Anthony Davis played defense in New Orleans, maybe even a little better because he's really versatile. Yet he gives
he's more on the perimeter.
Yeah, and now he's got that championship behind him, right? Whereas Anthony Davis never had playoff success in New Orleans, although he played well in the playoffs. It's just that, New Orleans wasn't quite up to speed. So, yeah, Giannis is the best player in the league. So I think if, gun to head, I'd say Milwaukee's the team to beat in the East because they did it a year ago, although, they needed overtime in Game 7 to beat Brooklyn in the second round, and they had to go 6 games against, I think, an overmatched Atlanta team, and then they were down 2-0 against Phoenix, but they learned a way to win each of those series with Giannis obviously being a major part of it. But, yeah, I would say Milwaukee's the team to beat in the East, but I look, we got to see what happens with Philadelphia, with Simmons. We got to see if Miami could stay healthy. Got to see what the hell happens with Brooklyn. And then you get that second tier of teams, which I think you can put the Celtics, Atlanta, Cleveland. Chicago is kind of one of those teams that looks like it fades in and out of the top tier to the second tier. See where they're at. I think it's going to be fascinating. The Eastern playoffs, literally, once you get through the play-in tournament, you're going to have a lot of really, I think, pretty good series.
You certainly looks like that, and because it is so jumbled, Sap, I do feel like it's fair to just defer to the defending champions and say, no one's really stood out, so why not go with the defending champions? And Brooklyn at full health is obviously the most talented, dangerous team, but they are going to only be at full health possibly for away games. They just, you can't have a part-time player. You can't, it doesn't work. It's, and I think, honestly, I think that they're getting sick of him. We've heard about Harden being upset. I can't imagine Durant's happy with the situation. And if I'm one of the other role players in the team, I'm pissed too.
Yeah, it's like I go out there and bust my hump every night, and then this guy comes back only on the road and gives us 32 minutes. And now that cuts into my playing time. And look, Brooklyn right now is the 6th seed in the East, which actually might work out better for them in the postseason, because then Kyrie could play more playoff games because he can only play on the road. You wouldn't have home court advantage at any point in the playoffs. So we talked about that 3 weeks ago, and kind of seemed silly or crazy. And it's not, because, I think Brooklyn has a much better road record than they do at home. And it's tough to really judge what Brooklyn has been the last nearly month without Kevin Durant, because he's right there with Giannis and LeBron as the 3 best players in the world. And look, he was having an MVP caliber season before he got hurt. So I think you have to obviously still consider them contenders. But the key guy there is Harden, who looks like he's just checked out and is talking about may not re-sign with Brooklyn, will go into free agency. I don't think he's really happy there. And a lot of that has to do with Kyrie Irving.
Absolutely. So moving on from the All-Star game and the standings in the East, Sap, our team here, the Celtics, who we talk about a lot, it is the 75th anniversary of the franchise and the 75th anniversary of the NBA. So the Celtics thought it would be a good idea to list their all-time 75th anniversary team, which consists of 15 players, 3 teams of 5 guys. They didn't do it, first all NBA, first team, all NBA. They didn't do it that style. They just named 5 guys at a time. Here are the 15 players selected, Sap. This is in alphabetical order. Ray Allen, Larry Bird, Bob Cousy, Dave Cowens, Kevin Garnett, John Havlicek, Tommy Heinsohn, Dennis Johnson, Sam Jones, Kevin McHale, Robert Parrish, Paul Pierce, Bill Russell, Bill Sharman, and JoJo White. Obviously, a lot of luminaries on that list, Sap. I believe everybody on that list is in the Hall of Fame. What were your thoughts?
They nailed it. I can't really think of any other players that I would have on there besides those 15. Now, here's where it gets somewhat intricate. And I know you're going to push back on Ray Allen. You want Antoine Walker on there instead. But how are we judging this just in their careers with the Celtics? Because Ray Allen only played 5 years with the Celtics. So is he one of the 15 greatest Celtics just during that 5-year period? He did help them win a championship, so that does matter. But in totality, absolutely, he's one of the 15 greatest players ever wear a Celtic uniform. I get that. So that's where it gets kind of difficult to decipher, right? Like, obviously, I broke it down into first, second, and third teams, because I think that.
Yep.
Yeah. So my first team would be obviously Russell, Bird, Havlicek, Cousy. To me, those are the easy 4 ones, because those are the 4 greatest players in team history, and they only played for the Celtics. Pretty easy. I've always had this debate with people like, who's the 5th greatest Celtic? Now, in terms of their entire career, it'd probably be Kevin Garnett, because Garnett, as an all-time great player, is right there with John Havlicek, high teens, low 20s all time. But again, he only played 6 years with the Celtics. So second team, I put Paul Pierce on the first team because, again, this is a guy who won a finals MVP, beat LeBron James in the 2008 playoffs, beat Kobe Bryant in the NBA finals in 2008. I mean, you make a case that in both of those series, he was the best player on the court against the 2 best players in basketball at that time in LeBron and Kobe. He played here forever. He's a top or near the record books. So I think Paul Pierce, you can make a case he's the 5th greatest Celtic. Now, if you want to get into the debate who was better, Dave Cowens, Kevin McHale, Paul Pierce, it is interesting to look at, because I think they all made the 75th anniversary team, the all-time 75 team in the NBA.
Yeah,
75 players. But they weren't ranked. But they're all kind of in the same locale. I would probably put McHale, Cowens, Pierce in that order. But for some reason, I'm putting Pierce on the first team only because he's got that Finals MVP. McHale never had a Finals MVP. Neither did Dave Cowens. In 74 was Havlicek. In 76 it was actually JoJo White. So that's where it gets a little bit interesting. But I think they nailed all 15 of them, Jet. It's probably not good podcasting to say, yeah, they got it right. But I think they got it right. Sometimes just the right answer is evident. And then I think it was in this case, Jet. I know you're going to push back on Ray Allen because you despise him, but
yes.
That's your right to illustrate.
So yeah, obviously Ray Allen is the one that sticks out like a sore thumb. I'm a little surprised that they put him on there because the organization's relationship with him isn't great. He wasn't at Paul Pierce's retirement ceremony. We know it didn't end well. We know Kevin Garnett, if he saw him, would probably spit in his face. So
I was at Paul Pierce's retirement ceremony. I was
you
at
were
that
there,
game. I was
but
there.
But Ray Allen wasn't.
I was invited, so I should have made the top player
You
of the Celtics
should
history.
have.
Actually, it was a Sunday after came in and absolutely destroyed the Celtics. And it was just after the Cavaliers made all these deals at the trade deadline, and they started to play really well. I think they beat the Celtics by like 24. It was in 2018. Yeah, I got to interview Doc Rivers before the game, which was fun because I always loved Doc Rivers as a coach and as a player because, you know, I was covering the Celtics in the league in the 80s. He was one of the best guys to go to, especially after losses. Every time a team would come in and play the Celtics, they'd lose in the playoffs unless they were the Lakers. And you had to go into the losing locker room, and Doc Rivers was one of the most accommodating guys. But I digress. Go right ahead. And I agree. And it was somewhat of a surprise, but maybe, Jet, this is thawing now. The relationship, it's getting a little bit more cordial than it was, say, back in 2018.
Well, Kevin Garnett's jersey is going up in the rafters very soon. I am curious if Ray will be there. I would imagine they'll defer to Garnett if he wants him there or not. And everything I've heard would indicate he doesn't. So I don't know. You know, obviously it left a bad taste in a lot of fans' mouths with Ray Allen. And the question I think, Sap, that you brought up persists with this list. Is it the 15 greatest guys who have ever worn a Celtics jersey, or are you just looking at their Celtics career? Because that becomes a very important question, because then you're looking at other guys who wore a Celtics jersey for a brief amount of times, you know, like Dominique Wilkins or Bob McAdoo, Tiny Archibald,
Bill Walton.
Yeah, of course.
Example, but Bill Walton, I think, you know,
Shaq was even wore a Celtics jersey.
Yeah,
so
that's where it gets difficult, because that's like a half a year. But and Ray Allen was what, 5 years, because he left after the 2012 season. So at 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yeah, 5 years. Whereas Garnett stayed one more year. So he played a 6th season with the Celtics rather than the 5 that Ray played with. So yeah, I mean, that's an interesting question, because the Celtics have had so many players on their roster, right? Because it seems like every great player ends his career with the Celtics chasing a championship.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, again, I think, you know, the way to do it is to judge them by their career as a Celtic. I don't see how you could just say, okay, the 15 best players to ever wear a Celtics jersey. That doesn't really make sense, especially when you have so many players who spent long parts, if not their entire career, with the Celtics. So I had virtually the same list, with the exception of I took Ray Allen off and I put Antoine Walker on, and he would stick out a little bit because he's the only guy in this list who's not in the Hall of Fame, Sap. But he was the captain of the team. He's the first, from my memory, he's my first homegrown all-star player. Because, you know, I was born in 89. The Celtics were pretty much terrible throughout the 90s. They drafted him in 97.
96.
96.
I believe. Yeah, 96.
Yeah, same draft as Kobe. Okay, 96. Yep. And he became, you know, an all-star. He was on the covers of a couple of, you know, magazines. He was on a cover of a NBA Live video game. And I remember just being super excited at the time, because before that I had, you know, D Brown and Dino Raja. So to me, you know, and I think to a lot of people my age, Antoine Walker really sticks out as a guy that, you know, was one of our first memories of a guy that the Celtics took that became a star level player, or an all-star level player at least. And, you know, he had a distinguished career when he was at the Celtics. He didn't win a championship with the Celtics. He did win one with the Heat, but, you know, he was the team leader. Even when Pierce was on the team, Walker was the leader of the team. And by the end of his career, you know, he was taking way too many threes, and it looked bad, but he was one of the few guys who was a 2010 player, Sap, and he was a great passer too. I mean, he was a really talented guy. He let his body completely go. But yeah, I think that he's an underappreciated Celtic.
Yeah, I can buy into that. He did win a championship with Miami. So if you put him on that list instead of Ray Allen, he would be the only player on that list that is not on the Hall of Fame, as you said. And I don't think he's ever going to make the Hall of Fame, although who the hell knows in basketball. It seems like everybody makes the Hall of Fame. He'd also be the only guy that didn't win a championship with the Celtics. He did win one with the Heat in 2006. I'll throw one more name out there for you. If you want to look at someone who won a championship, made multiple All-Star teams, Rajon Rondo, I mean, he was the fourth best player on that championship team, right behind Garnett, Pierce, and Allen. But he was still a key contributor to that team. And then as those guys got older, he started to have a bigger impact. Maybe you could throw his name in there. But
yeah, some of the names I heard, Sep, Paul Silas was another one. Nate Archibald.
Yep.
Some people lobbying for Jason Tatum. Not yet, obvious. In my opinion, I don't think you can put him on there. The
100th anniversary, and I hope I'm around for that. You will be. I hope I'm around for that. Yeah, he'll make that team, I'm sure, because he'll surpass a lot of, provided he plays a few more years. And again, we're talking the Celtics. The championships is pretty important, right? I think when you look at a franchise that's won that often, that you kind of go with guys that at least won a championship. I'd be interested to see what the Lakers put out for their 75th anniversary team. If they do their top 15 players, like is LeBron going to be on there? He's in his fourth year and he's won a championship. I think he's the greatest player to ever wear a Laker uniform, but not just as a Laker. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Well, by the standard that the Celtics set for this, if you're going to go by the same type of standards, then you would say yes on the Lakers list. LeBron is on there.
He's a Finals MVP, right?
So if Garnett and Allen made the Celtics list, then LeBron should absolutely make the Lakers list.
Yeah. Except I will say this, and don't take this the wrong way: the Lakers, great players, they're deeper than the Celtics.
Yeah, because everybody ends up signing in LA.
Up with them, but but they also have a lot of guys. Look, Elton Baylor never won a championship. He certainly will make that team. I think he's the 11th greatest player in the history of the sport. This speaks even more highly of Bill Russell, right? Because Bill Russell won 11 championships, and you look at that all-time team, and there's guys on there that played with Russell. Obviously, Cousy, Sam Jones, Bill Sharman, John Havlicek, and Tom Heinsohn.
Yeah.
But clearly he was the guy, right? I mean,
they weren't without a doubt.
So that speaks again to the greatness of Bill Russell, which I think I sound like a broken record when I keep bringing him up, because how do you win 11 championships in 13 years? I like, that doesn't even make any sense. I mean, we've just seen Tom Brady retire and his numbers are like, I can't even comprehend them. Right. Because
and he was going against the Lakers virtually every year.
And he was beating the Lakers every year.
Beating them.
The 76ers with Wilt, or, what I was like, and one of those finals, he lost, he was injured. It's like the guy never lost. He won Olympic gold. He won 2 college champions. I mean, it's unfathomable. So I'm always sensitive to that this shows even more that, he had a stacked team. Obviously, he had a better team than Wilt had for the most part. But, late in his career, he was able to beat the Lakers, who had Wilt still pretty damn dominant, Elgin Baylor and Jerry West. I mean, that to me is the greatest big three in the history of the sport. I mean, when you're talking about 3 guys that are in the top 12 all time on the same team and they couldn't win a championship, well, Bill Russell beat twice in the finals. That's pretty.
And then they had other great players on those Lakers teams too. Like Gail Goodrich was on those team. I mean, they were stacked without a doubt.
Yeah, maybe that'll be an exercise for the next show to see who would be on that roster.
I think it's fun to look at all those, the old legacy teams and make up their rosters. I'm glad the Celtics are doing this. I think it's great.
I mean, the Bulls who have 6 championships would be like Jordan, Pippen. You got some other guys. Seriously,
Derrick Rose, I guess you.
Derrick Rose and Norm Van Leer and
Joakim Noah.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, that again speaks to the greatness of Michael Jordan. They're only relevant because of him, right? They only won.
I think if they did their all-time list, they'd probably put him on twice, once with the 45 and once with the 23, right? They
put him on 3 times if you want. I mean, that and Pippen's the second greatest Bull. And then after that,
it's not close.
No, I mean, Derrick Rose is. I wouldn't know if Derrick Rose is the 3rd greatest Bull. I think. But like Jimmy Butler would make it, and Butler's a hell of a player, but he would certainly make the top 15 Bulls of all time. Well,
that's what it has to do with Sep. It has to do with the Lakers and the Celtics are unique because they've been virtually their entire existence been good.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And even when they weren't, they always kind of bounced back and got great players. Yeah, I think it's a fascinating list, and I don't know who voted for this. I think it was probably some of the media members, whether it be Washburn from the Globe or Bullpet, who still covers the team for a different organization now, or was Bob Ryan involved with
It was, I can tell you, 30 media members and historians, and they comprised 50%, and the other 50% was fans.
I think they nailed it. I really do. Again, I know you have a problem with Ray Allen. I don't, because Ray helped LeBron win one of his championships, so I have a soft spot for him. But yeah, I can see where you maybe push back on that. You want someone representing the Celtics when you started loving the Celtics. And like you said, the first star they had for you was Antoine Walker. It kind of makes me feel old to know that you were 3 years old when Larry Bird retired.
It's kind of the only unrepresented era of the team, right? That 90s era.
Great era, but they kind of hung around and they got to the
they stunk for most of the 90s.
For the most part, they did, but at least they made in the late 90s into the early 2000s, you'd watch because of years. They became decent, right? I mean, they were a good. You could watch them. They weren't an embarrassment. Let's put it that way. So
yeah, from when Bird retired up until Antoine's rookie year, they were an embarrassment.
Yeah, I mean, you had Dominique out there, and look, I love Dominique Wilkins, but I mean, he was ancient. He's coming off like Achilles surgery.
Yeah, and like I said, Dino Raja, D. Brown, Eric Montross.
Yeah, Eric Montross is the perfect one. I mean, Dino Raja is in the Basketball Hall of Fame.
Yes, he is.
As a European player, which again, I never discount anybody's chances to make the Basketball Hall of Fame.
Well, especially if as a contributor, the path is a lot easier as a contributor.
Yeah,
frankly.
but we're going to put in Dave Zinkoff, who was the public address announcer for the 76ers. He's probably in there. He was great at what he did, but I mean, he put everybody in the Hall of Fame.
Well, maybe you'll get in then, Seth.
Yeah, I mean, if you last long enough, old enough,
I'd put you in.
Maybe LeBron gets in. I'll present him.
Yeah, maybe LeBron will get his number retired with 3 different teams, Seth.
It could. I mean, I don't think Laker Nation's too happy with him right now after the tweet he sent out after the Lakers lost by a point to the Clippers in a game LeBron didn't play. I guess LeBron was just home watching the game, rehabbing the knee, and he tweeted out, "What a game. Mr. October, Reggie Jackson comes through for the Clippers." I'm like, LeBron, you play for the Lakers. I don't know if that's necessarily the right, but that's who he is in a sense that he likes to keep everybody close to him. He believes in being friends with everybody. And look at even Draymond Green, who kicked him in the nuts in the 2016 finals. Now they're business partners. LeBron's one of those guys that, I don't think he holds grudges. I think other than
the opposite of Draymond Green, he hates everybody. He's still complaining about Rudy Gobert crying after not getting selected for the All-Star game 3 years ago. And
worse than anybody who's, retires and fails to mention Robert Kraft or Bill Belichick in his 961-word retirement piece on Instagram. But Brady holds grudges. I don't know who's going to present him in 5 years when he enters Canton. Probably Alex Guerrero. That would make the most sense.
Probably will be.
Right. I mean, don't you think? I mean,
they'll make an exception for him. It doesn't have to be somebody in the Hall of Fame. It was just, you know what, Tom, whatever you want. Alex Guerrero, fine.
I mean, it's interesting because it should be Belichick. That would be really cool, but it's not going to be. Although I still think that Brady's bigger problem now is more with Kraft and Belichick. He knew Belichick wanted to get rid of him for the longest time, but he could always go to Kraft and know that he had an ally in his owner. And in 2017, Kraft gave the edict. You got to move on from Garoppolo. Brady's our quarterback. In 2018, Kraft got involved and said, we're not trading Gronk. But then by the time we got to 2019, he decided to side with Belichick over Brady. And I think Brady felt hurt. I don't think Belichick could really hurt Brady, right? It's like, I don't think they ever had that strong.
You know what he is.
Exactly. It's like, the people that disappoint you are the ones that you love the most. Like your neighbor that you barely know, you might get pissed at them because they, start the car up too early in the morning or whatever, but you're not going to be disappointed and feel slighted by them. But your cousin that you're close with who decides not to put you in his wedding, that's going to hurt you because you love your cousin. Same thing here. I think Brady feels slighted more by the owner than the coach.
Yeah, and I think, also, and there's obviously a football tangent, but that's okay.
Why not?
I think there's, listen, Kraft has been a phenomenal owner for the Patriots. Mm-hmm. I'm not, you can't argue anything other than that. But I think with, Brady as he's a football player and a football genius and, somebody who just loves the sport. I think he has that sort of at least kindred spirit with Belichick where they respect each other because of how much they
Right.
know the game. Kraft probably knows football better than most people in the world, but he doesn't know it like Brady and Belichick. So,
No.
I think that there's it's a professional respect between Brady and Belichick. At the end of the day, Belichick maybe wanted to move on from him or did want to move on from him. Brady didn't want to go, but I think they can acknowledge each other. They acknowledge each other's greatness because, they're not going to, they have that in common that they both live and breathe football and understand it on a different plane than anybody else can.
And they needed each other. I mean, they needed each other to succeed. You can break down the 6 Super Bowls, and the first half of the dynasty was probably a little bit more Belichick, the second half more Brady, but in totality, they won 6 Super Bowls together. I mean, the last Super Bowl, you don't get to the Super Bowl without Tom Brady with his great performance against the Chargers in the divisional round and his clutch play against Kansas City on the road in the AFC Championship game. But you don't win the Super Bowl without Belichick's great defensive performance, led by actually Brian Flores, who was calling the defense. And obviously he's at the front of the sports world this week, suing the league. And I support him on that. I hope he shakes things up because it's ridiculous that we're going to have 9 new head coaches in the NFL and not one of them is going to be a minority, which is just
it's
incredible.
Gross. It's pretty gross. The Flores thing is fascinating. It's going to get so ugly though. I feel for him and his family because the NFL is not going to take this sitting down. They
No.
sling mud like nobody's business.
Yeah, they're like an excavator, right? I mean, they're just going to dig and dig and dig and try to besmirch him. And yeah, I mean, it's kind of tough because he may never coach again in the league. Maybe down the road he can coach in college. Obviously, the NFL is a better place to coach than college. The money's better. In theory, the security's better, although I don't know about that anymore. But yeah, I mean, and I look and I know we've kind of gone off the deep end here, but we do that from time to time. But I look at someone like Jim. I don't think he's a great coach, but in 3 years with the Colts, his first year he went to the Super Bowl, lost. Second year he got back to the playoffs, lost in the wild card round, but still, 2 pretty good years there. And then his final year, they were tanking because Peyton Manning was out for the year, so they knew that Peyton Manning was going to move on, so they needed a quarterback. So suck for luck, right? So they got the pick for Andrew Luck first overall, and then they became a contender, and then they fired Jim Caldwell before he ever had a chance to coach Andrew Luck. He goes to Detroit Jet for 4 years, goes 36-28 with 2 playoff appearances. That's known as a dynasty for the Lions. When
they are they think they've taken the crown as the worst franchise in sports after Matt Stafford run to the Super Bowl. You're just like, okay, right. No one can win Detroit. It's impossible.
No. I mean, I was kind of hoping Brady ended up in Detroit. I really was serious.
The ultimate challenge.
Yeah, the ultimate challenge. Like, just go to Detroit and see what you can do, Tom. And I think his mom was from, his mom was from Minnesota originally, not Michigan. But yeah, I was like, okay, that would really be the cherry on top if he goes to Detroit and wins a Super Bowl. But yeah, I mean, Jim Caldwell, he can't get a job. Seriously, like
Eric Bieniemy.
Yeah, I mean, the defensive coordinator of the Rams, Raheem Morris, has done a fantastic job and actually did a pretty good job with Tampa. I think he won 10 games one year they didn't make the plus, but he had them playing pretty well. He doesn't get another chance yet. We get Adam Gase got 2 chances, and everybody else seems to get 2 chances except any coaches of color.
Yeah, it's really bad. The NBA has struggled with this too, but they're really coming along and they're making good progress on it. At least, it's anything is going to be, any progress is still too slow, but it's better to be moving in the right direction. The NFL is, moving in the wrong direction, which is scary in 2022 to say that.
So true.
So we'll see how that plays out. Obviously, we have an interest in that as sports fans, though this remains a basketball show. And we're going to have plenty more to talk about next week, Sap, as the trade deadline is rapidly approaching. Already a minor move made in the NBA between the Clippers and the Blazers, as Norman Powell and Robert Covington head to LA, and Eric Bledsoe, who I didn't realize was on the Clippers again, is going to Portland, as Portland's kind of in salary dump mode. So yeah, we'll react to all the trade rumors and any trades that happen next week. Certainly, we'll talk about more Ben Simmons drama and lots more to get to in the NBA. As there's always news. So we are the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap. We are presented by Full Press Coverage. Make sure you check out our social medias at John Sap 25 at Jet Stryer, and you can check out the show on YouTube, youtube.com/Jet Stryer, or find the podcast wherever podcasts are found. Appreciate y'all listening. We'll talk to you later. See you, everybody.